So let's go to this story. I mean, this is disturbing at every level, no matter which way you look at this. The 5 police officers who've been sacked after body cam footage was released showing Tyre Nichols, a young black man, being punched, kicked and hit with a baton after being pulled over for an alleged traffic violation. He later died in hospital from those injuries. The incident occurred in Memphis in the United States. It follows other incidents of police brutality in the US, such as the death of George Floyd in 2020, which led to global protests and discussions of systemic racism and white supremacy in society. However, this time the 5 officers involved were black. This has not stopped some commentators, however, from arguing that the incident was down to racism. Have a look at this.
I'm about to educate some people right now. The vicious, brutal, unjustified extrajudicial killing of Tyre Nichols is as a result of a police system that is built on white supremacy. White supremacy underpins the policing and criminal justice system, both in the United States and the United Kingdom. It shapes a culture that sees black people as less, treats black lives as disposable, and ensures that black lives don't matter. Look, what I'm trying to explain here is that there is a systemic reality of white supremacy that produces racist white cops and racial gatekeeping black and brown cops, okay?
That was Dr. Shola. We have spoken, well, I've spoken with her many times in the past. She's a prominent activist on these kind of issues. But can racism be an argument for this killing? Is this down to white supremacy? For goodness sake. Afia Hagen is a journalist and broadcaster and a bit of a mate, so I better tread carefully as well. Afia, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, Ian?
I'm good as gold. Listen, we agree on a lot of things when we do the talk together. We have 1 or 2 little blips along the way. This might be one of them. Maybe you can educate me. You heard Dr. Shola. I don't know if you know her, but certainly, she's appeared on talkTV before. To many people looking on, the idea that 5 black men killing another black man, albeit 5 coppers and a man who apparently had done something terrible behind the wheel of his car, which, as it turns out, I don't think he'd even done that. How can that be racism? How can that be white supremacy?
There's a few issues at play here. So first of all, there is the issue of racism, and there is the issue that the police force in America is underpinned by white supremacy. So the problem is the institution, and the institution produces these police officers. The problem is also that black men, black people, but mostly black men in the US and here are seen as a threat to authorities. So they're more likely to be stopped and searched, as we know. And when they are stopped, these interactions are more likely to turn violent because of how black men are perceived. And that comes from the teaching that police officers have all the way through their career. The problem is the uniform, and the problem is also the institution that the uniform embodies. And that produces people who see black people as less, whether those officers are white or whether those officers are black or whether those officers are brown. Now, for a long time, people said that the way to combat this issue was to have lots more different kinds of people in the police force. So that could include black and brown officers. But like I said, it's still producing officers like this, officers who will use this level of violence, which when this press conference went out on Friday, when we saw the video released of what happened for Tyre Nichols, even the police officers and people from the police that talked about it said that this wasn't proper policing, that the violence was completely unnecessary. Those police officers are a product of the police academy they went to. They're a product of their environment. So whether they are black, whether they are brown, or whether they are white, they are taught that black people are seen as less. They are taught that they have to use much more violence towards them. And that is the underpinning of white supremacy that runs through the police force. Surely
the people responsible, Afia, are the 5 men that essentially kicked this man to death. I mean, the idea that it was, their tutors through their police career could have been other black people. Well, I don't understand why we would link this to... this is just some bad coppers, right? Derek Chauvin, I think was his name, responsible for the killing of George Floyd, was a bad police officer. The other officers were also non-white that surrounded that incident. This is about individuals that are out of control, isn't it? I mean, the idea we link it to race is a nonsense. These are bad men. These are bad people. They are violent people. They shouldn't be police officers, whether they're black or white. And we've seen here that it can happen whether you're black or white. It's nothing to do with the way somebody who trains you. This is to do with the mentality of those involved.
It is to do with the mentality of those involved. Absolutely. Those individuals are bad men who shouldn't be in positions of power, who shouldn't be in the police force, but they are also a product of their environment. They do have to go to training. You know, you don't just get up one day, put on a police uniform and decide to be a police officer. You have to go through training, years in the academy and then years on the force. And those years in the academy and years on the force are what is what teaches them to be what they are.
But
so
you're saying it wouldn't have happened if that guy, if Tyre Nichols had been white, you're saying that wouldn't have happened?
I'm saying that it's less likely to have happened. There is a real problem that there is brutality within the police force. You know, nearly 80 people have been killed in the US alone by police officers. Now, I'm not sure the makeup of how many of them are black or how many of them are white. I'm sure that they are from different races, but that tells you that there is a problem within the police force. They do have a problem of being overly violent.
But that's not white supremacy, is it? That's like you've got, like in the same way that we've got some police in this country and we know about the WhatsApp groups and the terrible cases of police officers who are either serving life in prison right now, former police officers, those that have been charged awaiting sentence for horrendous crimes. I mean, there are individuals that might gravitate to the power, whether they're black, white, brown or whatever.
Absolutely. There are individuals that gravitate to the power. There are individuals that do terrible things. But what I'm saying is they are a product of their environment. Now, when I say that white supremacy underpins the police force, it's about the way that they police other people. It's about the way they see themselves in society and how they see other people in society. And it's also about the fact that they see black people, particularly black men, as lesser than. So therefore, they have to use more violence against them. They have to use more brutality against them. They have to use weapons, whatever they may be, guns, tasers or batons, where perhaps they wouldn't use them on someone else. It underpins the whole nature of policing in the United States. Absolutely it does. And that's why it produces police officers like this, whether they are white, black or brown, and also means that we're going to have more victims who are more likely to be black.
But why are we not seeing a kind of the outpouring after George Floyd, and people will argue whatever the positives or the negatives were, Black Lives Matter and what that meant. You know, a man gets killed in the United States and there's a protest in Whitehall, there's a protest in, you know, in Paris, etc. I mean, that stuff was extraordinary, and people will argue about the, you know, the fabric of those debates and whether they agree with them or not, but nonetheless, I mean, it absolutely had a huge impact for the wider debate about racism, etc. With this, there's nothing. Where are Black Lives Matter on this one?
There's absolutely not nothing. I mean,
come on,
I have
Afia,
seen
there's no,
so
there's
much,
no. I mean, there were campaigns. Where is it? Where are the voices?
Listen, the voices are still there. You may not hear them, but the voices are still there. People are still talking about it. It's still there on social media. Yes, I agree with you. We're not necessarily seeing protests on the streets like we did during the time of George Floyd's death in May 2020. The circumstances are also different. I think the pandemic, you know, it played a part in why people came out to protest then as well. But I think people also think that it's going to happen again. It comes around again. So perhaps what is the point in going out on the streets? Because does that make any difference? You know, we talk about perhaps we need to hire more black and brown officers, and that means that this won't happen. Okay. I don't think that's going to have an effect either. So people think, what are we going to do? And actually the conversations need to be around really reforming policing.
Listen, Afia, we hit the clock, but thank you very